Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Video for you guys to watch. Think you might find it amusing, so let's go to the video and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Sometimes you F around, sometimes you find out. That's the way it goes. You know, it happens to the best of us, but thankfully it also happens to the worst of us. And that's what I want to focus on today, because large multinational corporations decided to hitch their wagons to fascism in numerous ways, and now they're complaining about the backlash that they're receiving as a result of their own actions. Now, the funniest example has got to be Target, which is one of many companies that rolled back or eliminated DEI policies altogether after Trump took office. Now, remember, a lot of these corporations adopted DEI policies in response to the George Floyd protests in 2020, but just 5 years later, they're already reversing course so that way they can capitalize on this new wave of cultural regression that Trump ushered in. And it's pretty obvious that corporations don't have social values, and I think most people understand that they're just opportunists seeking to maximize profits, but the pivot was so sudden that it presumably even gave normies whiplash as well, and Target, which has always been perceived as a progressive corporation for some reason, pissed off a large portion of their own customer base with this action, which sparked a boycott organized by Pastor Jamal Bryant of Atlanta, and this boycott hit them hard. So much so that Target CEO Brian Cornell literally had to request a meeting with Reverend Al Sharpton before he and other civil rights leaders expanded the boycott nationwide. And as you can see from this picture, the meeting did happen, and Cornell is the melanin-challenged one to the left of Al Sharpton. And during this meeting, Sharpton confronted him, saying, "You made commitments based on the George Floyd movement. What changed? Are you trying to say everything's fine now because the election changed? That's insulting to us." And he asked this question because in the wake of George Floyd's murder, Cornell said the event moved him. Quote, "That could have been one of my Target team members," Cornell said in 2021 at an event hosted by the Economic Club of Chicago, recounting his thoughts as he watched the video of George Floyd taking his final breaths. And seeing George Floyd get murdered moved him so much that he claimed that companies like his should be leading the charge for social progress in America, only to then reverse course like that the second it became politically expedient. But unfortunately for him, his embarrassing attempt at damage control with Al Sharpton didn't really help at all, because CBS 58 reports that Target's problems are actually getting worse, not only because of the boycotts, but because of the policies of the president that they virtue signal to. Target CEO Brian Cornell said, quote, "We faced several additional headwinds this quarter, including 5 consecutive months of declining consumer confidence, uncertainty regarding the impact of potential tariffs, and the reaction to the updates we shared on DEI in January." CBS 58 reports Target stock dropped 7% during pre-market trading Wednesday. Target stock has declined 37% over the past year. Oh, I love this story so much. Inject this into my veins. But here's the thing. Target still hasn't reverted back to their pre-Trump corporate policies, so they're obviously trying to have their cake and eat it too. On one hand, they don't want to piss off Daddy Trump because they still want to be able to influence him, especially now that tariffs might affect them even worse. But at the same time, they want their progressive customer base back, obviously, because they shop there all the time. So they're kind of caught in the middle between fascists and progressives when all they actually care about is just making the line go up. So sad for them. But right now, it seems like organizers are the ones that hold all the cards, and since they haven't capitulated to them, well, the boycotts have continued. And it's gotten so bad that Target, as well as other corporations like Walmart and Home Depot, are actually warning investors that they're worried about even more boycotts. Christian Giacone, director of the Peter Arkley Institute for Risk Management, explains companies face a catch-22 situation. Consumers may be dissatisfied if a company takes a particular position on a social issue, or if a company takes no position at all. And as a result of this, corporations are kind of stuck in a state of paralysis about what to do because, you know, both action and inaction is going to piss off some people in the country. So the question is, what do? Who do you piss off? And really, it depends. It seems like most corporations aren't down with LGBTQ plus people anymore because, as HuffPost reports, they've refrained from sponsoring Pride events this year pretty substantially. Although, the feeling is mutual because, as the Minnesota Post points out, organizers of San Francisco's Pride actually cut ties with Meta over their DEI reversal, and Target was booted out of their hometown Pride event for the same reason. And you'd think that Target wouldn't be too mad about this since they've already scaled down their Pride merch this year, and they're kind of doing it on the DL, so to speak, and selling most of their Pride merch online where somebody can't go into the store and film themselves complaining about it. But, Target's not alone here because in an overview of an analysis conducted by Gravity Research, the Washington Stand says that most companies are actually also scaling back Pride celebrations this year, and some are choosing to stay in the closet altogether by making anonymous donations to Pride organizers to simultaneously get them off their backs while avoiding conservative backlash. But it's still risky because any one of them could become the next Bud Light if word gets out, but they think that at least being frenemies with LGBTQ plus people is worth the risk because one day, the culture will shift again, and they don't want to completely burn that bridge between them and LGBTQ plus people because they want to exploit and profit off of them. So they're kind of trying to walk this fine line, and Target's chief commercial officer said the quiet part loud when he was explaining why they're still trying to do some things that are perceived as quote-unquote woke. Quote, Rick Gomez, Target's chief commercial officer, told reporters in May that it's important to celebrate heritage months, which highlight different groups, from Latinos to Asian Americans to the LGBTQ plus community. Quote, they drive sales growth for us, he said. Wait a second. Are you telling me that these corporations aren't celebrating marginalized people out of the goodness of their hearts? This was all about sales to them? What? I can't believe that. They're so fucking cynical and evil. But domestic backlash is just one dimension of the crises that these large multinational corporations are currently facing because Trump's popularity abroad, as well as U.S. policy specifically, is hurting international sales. And we're not just talking about Tesla here, of course. I'm also talking about corporations like McDonald's, the symbol of American capitalism, who's suffering their worst sales decline since the beginning of the pandemic, and they're blaming a notable uptick in anti-American sentiment, particularly among diners in Northern Europe and Canada. That's weird. I wonder why Canadians in particular are suddenly so anti-American. It must be something that they did and not anything that we've done, of course. But I mean, that's international sales. Domestically, they're attributing a decline in sales, especially among lower and middle income areas, to declining consumer confidence. That is a problem because of many reasons, among them tariffs. Hey, maybe it was also a bad idea, McDonald's, just a thought, to let Trump do a photo op in one of your stores because now it looks like he's associated with your brand and people opposed to fascism might not want to support you because of that. But I mean, what do I know? I'm just a lowly peasant who lacks the business bona fides of these big-brained executives who get paid millions and millions of dollars. But on the subject of international sales, these corporations were already in the shitter prior to Trump's return due to the growing prominence of the anti-Israel BDS movement. Consumers are learning about the ways that multinational corporations support genocidal countries like Israel, and they're choosing to vote with their wallets. For example, companies like Starbucks are especially feeling the heat, particularly in the Middle East, because customers don't want to support a company whose home country is funding a modern-day Holocaust in Gaza, and things were already bad for them in 2020, but in 2025, it's getting worse for Starbucks, and their pain isn't limited to international markets. Their sales have fallen the last 4 quarters in a row, in part due to backlash over BDS and their union busting, and the BDS movement is taking credit for a loss of $7 billion in McDonald's sales after the Israeli version of McDonald's announced that they were going to be giving free meals to Israel's Nazi-like IDF soldiers, which isn't going to be popular for obvious reasons. But political backlash aside, most corporations are also feeling the squeeze from the ongoing uncertainty with Trump's tariffs. CBS News reports that Walmart, America's largest retailer, lowered sales expectations for the current fiscal year because of Donald Trump's tariffs. So a lot of these corporate CEOs are facing a nightmarish situation where their annual bonus may increase by a percentage or two less because of the tariffs and also political backlash and due to other reasons. And this is so sad. I feel genuinely sorry for all of them. None of us can comprehend what they're going through right now. So, thoughts and prayers to them. On a serious note, this is actually encouraging to me because it's a reminder that Americans actually do have power. And these corporations cannot exist without us. And while I'm supportive of targeted organized boycotts in general, I think that we should all do our best to avoid these corporations altogether all the time. Think about, rather than buying a coffee at Starbucks, maybe you can support a local coffee shop instead. Instead of getting McDonald's, maybe there's a restaurant in your town that you've never had that has amazing food. You can't cut out all of these corporations entirely since they've destroyed so many local businesses and they're the only option in so many towns. But to the extent that we can cut back, I think that we should. It's time that the left starts to flex their muscle, because these corporations have been fearful of backlash from conservatives because of the success of the Bud Light boycott, and also a lot of complaining by conservatives. But there's already signs that they're beginning to worry about backlash from the rest of us, which is good. But that means that we can't let up now, keep the pressure up, keep boycotting them, and don't support these blood-sucking companies who lobby government to do bad things at our expense, but for their profits, short-term profits in particular. So fuck them. This is good news that certainly is going to give me a little bit of extra pep in my step for today.
This kind of takes a topic that I had discussed before in another video about the relationship between a business and politics, and how that it doesn't ever seem to work for the business. And the fact that the companies that were mentioned here are suffering now, and have been for a while, because this is not something new that's been going on. I mean, in fact, like you said, Target, they've been taking the side of right-wing issues here for quite a while, and it's been effectively, diminishing their customer turnout. But what I think, the bigger problem here is that corporate America doesn't seem to learn from this yet. Every corporation, especially the bigger ones, has a public relations board. And I'm wondering, why are you paying these people to work for you as public relations if they're not telling you don't take any side or any issue in politics and make a stand on it, because you're going to offend, no matter if you're on the right side or on the left side, you're going to offend somebody in the country. And and the object is to get customers to come into your restaurant or your store and buy things. Well, you don't want to be discriminating, right? Because then that cuts into your customer base and you won't make money. But they keep doing this. All these companies, they keep doing this, and a lot lately. Especially in the last, 10 years, corporations can't seem to keep their mouth shut. They gotta it's like the CEOs want to get out there and make a stand on this person's campaign or that person's campaign. And when they do that, people start to boycott. Now, he's right in the video that the younger generation out there, they seem to like boycotting a lot. It's never been, to boycott in the past has never seemed to really matter too much with corporations. I can remember many times where people would say we need to boycott this and that, and this is like back in the 90s, when Bush was president, and people would say, oh, why bother, especially when the gas prices were going up, and people were saying we need to boycott Citgo. And it's like, well, you can boycott Citgo, and you're still paying for the oil if you go gas up someplace else. Citgo doesn't really dictate the price of the oil. Only the companies supplying the oil to the gas stations, they're the ones that really dictate it. Everybody else has to take it for what they get it for, and so boycotting a gas station or a gas station brand is not going to really help anything. Okay, but people back then were doing that. But today, it's like, how can I put this? And the younger generation out there, they seem to understand the workings of the businesses a lot better than my generation had, thought they understood it. Okay. And on top of that, they're more unified, which means if, let's say, somebody gets on the line and they said, oh, did you know that Target is doing this and that, they're against DEI and all that, and they start talking about it online, Other people will see that video, then they start talking about it in their own videos, and then they start talking about it, and it's like what they call it going viral. And when people see that video and the person making the video says, well, I'm boycotting them, guess what happens? Now everybody else listening to that video is going to feel justified boycotting it, and before you know it, you've got a movement started. And that's why today the boycotts seem to matter more now than they used to, because this younger generation, which is really pissed off, for a lot of reasons, okay? A lot of reasons. This generation wants to go on the offensive. This generation wants to take up the cause of hurting what's hurting them. And boycotting the companies that are taking stands against gays, against diversity, against you name it, okay? Usually, taking up those right-wing causes. They're the ones that are going to get the shit thrown at them, okay? They're the ones that's going to end up losing money at the end of the day because, like I said, majority of the country does not side with Republican positions. So when you take a stand on something Trump said, you've lost more than half your customer base if all those people decide we're not going to shop in your store anymore, we're not going to eat your food anymore, goodbye. And the problem with trying to reverse yourself after you've done that is that if these companies decide, oh, well, you know what, we were wrong to support Trump, we're going to support the other side. Well, you still lost, because now nobody's going to ever believe that you mean what you say anymore. And because you took a side against something and then reversed yourself, then now you've lost the other side that was for you. The Republican side, you've lost them because now they look at you as weak. And so they're going to boycott you for having reversed yourself. So you see, it's a no-win situation for companies to get involved in politics and make these grandiose stands. Okay, they've got no business being involved in next step. If they're gonna be in politics, then keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. Don't announce publicly where you stand on anything. Stay the hell out of it. You're safer that way. Because the minute people find out what you're doing and who you're supporting, who you're donating to, that's it. It gets out there like that because the internet, is quick. I mean, you can't depend on people being ignorant about everything all the time. Sooner or later, people are going to pick up the truth and they're going to find out what's going on. And this generation here is very invested in protecting itself, because they've had to play the defensive role ever since they left home. Because as they've been out, the government hasn't really been treating them very well, for the last decade or so. Things have been taken away from them that they needed in order to make it. 1 minute they're going to take care of your college bill, and the next minute they're not doing it. And it's like these people are used to being shit on. So now they're growing up being defensive. So now when they hear about somebody that's doing something they don't like, that's it. I'm not shopping there. I'm not buying nothing from them anymore. Fuck them. And that's why I think businesses really ought to stay the hell out of politics. McDonald's, yeah, I mean, I knew last year when Trump was doing that shit at McDonald's, I said this is, McDonald's was already hurting even then last year, okay, after the COVID pandemic, they were already hurting. But then Trump goes in there and he does that only hurt them even more. So this year, they're seeing even less people going to their restaurants than they did during COVID. That's pretty fucking bad. And I have to say, from McDonald's here in my town where we have one, I haven't seen a whole lot of traffic there either. Even at lunch hour, I haven't seen a lot of people going in there. And not only that, nobody really goes inside anymore to order their stuff. They go to the drive-through, but you never see anybody go inside. And I think a lot of reasons is because people don't want to deal with that stupid kiosk ordering crap when they go in there. Okay, I've heard that those things don't always work right. Okay, and they never have anybody at the register when you go in, I guess, and so the kiosk thing, and it seems like an inconvenience. It makes it more complicated. Going through the drive-through was an easier thing, but they're slow because they don't have the same number of people working in a restaurant there anymore. So and plus the prices are high, and the menu is very small compared to what it used to be. People just don't feel welcome there, okay? And that's not going to change until I think they change CEOs or whoever the hell's running McDonald's. I think when that person leaves and somebody else comes in, then you'll probably see changes if that company's still around. But right now, that's not going to happen. But McDonald's siding with Trump, letting him do that stupid bullshit of serving food out the I was like, yeah, that's not going to be a very good thing for them, okay? And certainly it hasn't been, so totally predictable. And so all these other stores and companies out there that are hitched their wagon on them, they're hurting, and that's predictably, totally predictable that was going to happen. And like I said, these corporations today, they need to stay the hell out of the political arena because it is a blood sport, and when you get mixed up in that, shit, you doom yourself, you doom your business. When my father used to fix TVs, they would come over and they'd be in that shop while he was in there for quite a while. I'm thinking, why the hell are you in there so damn long? They bring over a TV for him to fix, and they don't leave for like an hour. And it's because my father, and I found out later, was he's in there talking and talking politics, to people going in there. And my mother said, Galen, you shouldn't do that, because some of these people are never going to come back again because they hear what you think and what you stand for. You're going to lose customers. And he said, oh, fuck that. If these I don't want them back here if they're going to be Republican. Well, my mother was right. But, of course, the community was largely Republican anyway, so I don't think it really hurt his business as much as my mother was predicting it would. But, it's just the idea, he was out there talking politics, and he would always tell me never to talk politics and religion in public because it gets you in trouble. But he was always doing it, sometimes, he couldn't help himself. Or you get fellow veterans to come around and they'd sit there and talk about the war and talk about politics and they'd be there for hours in that shop there talking to him. I mean, he was Democrat, but oddly my father had some conservative leanings, old-fashioned ideas that only Republicans cling to these days. But he still considered himself Democrat only because of the way Republicans ruin economies. That's why he considered himself Democrat. Democrats always did better for the economy than Republicans ever do, so that's why he always would vote Democrat. But he had a lot of, the abortion thing he was against, no abortions, and because he was raised in a very religious kind of home. He went to a convent and all that stuff, so he got republicanism kind of pounded into his head at a young age. But it was the being able to make money, being able to buy things, and not pay through the nose for it. I mean, that's what really decided it for him, But like I said, he's he was doing that back then, and my mother was right. It's like you shouldn't be talking about stuff like that to these people because you're going to lose a lot of other. Word gets around. It's a small town. Rumors fly. But he kept doing it. So, but like I said, with today's big businesses, I mean, if they want to stay big and they want to stay profitable, they need to just stay the hell out of politics. Period. Okay, keep who they support and who they vote for, under their vest, and just don't tell anybody, because in the world we live in today, in this generation here, they will boycott you like that, and not in small numbers either. I mean, look what's happened to Tesla. Ever since Musk come out, and gave those Sieg Heils there in front of everybody, hey, that fucking place was doomed right after that, okay? And rightly so, I guess, because, hey, we don't want to do business with people like that. I mean, that's bad business. Okay? I mean, he felt like he could do that and get away with it, but, hey, he's not very aware of perceptions. It's not funny when you act like that. So, all right, that's it. I'll talk to you later.